Nick here from Trainer Plus, and this video is the first in a series of videos we're going to do focused on how to innovate, how fitness businesses can innovate here during the pandemic and as we work through the challenges of the extended challenges of the pandemic. So I've been listening for months to gym owners and trainers and the reality of people just really struggling now to make good revenue and be able to be profitable. So a lot of people have adapted very well to new operations, having had to adapt to those new operations and have moved some stuff to do some stuff online, but are not really seeing the revenues recover and increase. And people are really concerned about the future and the sustainability of their businesses here moving forward. So the goal of this series really is to talk about how to innovate the fitness business. So a change to a new business model, look at doing new things that are going to drive new revenue streams. So we're going to cover some of the economics realities of things right now in this video. And then we're going to go through looking at different online options that people have, what the market is saying about those things, what the market's bearing, what works, what doesn't work, how you can mix those things together. We're also going to talk about how to take an innovative mindset, so how to get more in that Silicon Valley tech startup, lean startup kind of way of being able to get some stuff out there, learn from it, iterate on it, and continue just to take an innovative approach to developing those services, to getting them to a point that you know exactly what works, and then you can scale it and hopefully reach out to new markets with it. So we'll also cover how to run challenges, both to engage your current members and clients, but also attract new members and clients to your business and get new revenues that way. Then we're going to talk about how to reach out to the corporate wellness and the healthcare markets, and just what you need to do to be able to reach out to those new markets and get potential new business from them. So that's everything we're going to cover. We're going to try and take a really honest and real perspective around this, coming at it with some objectivity. While I think a lot of the fitness industry is optimistic by nature, I think right now we need to take a realistic look at what is happening and what we can do to be able to get those recoveries and drive those new revenues and get to a point of profitability again, and survival, and hopefully getting to a point where we're thriving. So we will look at some economics, and we'll bring some of that fitness tech entrepreneur stuff from my background into it, but don't worry, we won't get too technical. We'll try and keep it at a really high level, and just something that's really practical for you to take. If you saw the last round of content we created at the start of the pandemic, we really focused on driving new online services like programming and oversight and things that you can do with Trainer Plus in the mix of regular training and streaming content and other things you can do. So that was really focused on how to price those services, how to package those services together, how to market them. So if you want some more in-depth content around that specifically, you can check the link in the description, or go to our YouTube channel, or follow our podcast, The Future of Fitness, and you can find that content there that's really helpful for how to price and package those new services in that sense. So what we did see was those that did follow those video series at the start and did develop those new types of services were actually able to keep engagement and retain people while things were shut down initially in the pandemic. And those type of services also worked for when things reopened again, because they were hybrid of in-person and online, and they kind of worked that way. So people that did adapt those new things, they were able to retain a lot of their business, or get people back, and even able in a lot of cases to grow their business. And especially as things started to open up again in the spring and summer, and people were able to see people again in person for training. So I was really surprised though at how many gyms themselves really did not innovate. Now I say that because gyms did adapt, and gyms did put some content out there and look at virtual training and things like that. But really that was just looking at the existing business and trying to keep as much of it as possible and hoping that members would come back, and really did not reach beyond the current member base. We're just hoping things would come back, and then eventually we get to a point where everything rebounds. But Trainers, on the other hand, adapted really quickly, and actually, like I said, a lot of people were able to grow their business, and some cases, really significantly during shutdowns and then beyond again. So now I think a new reality is really starting to sink in. For on the one hand, revenues have not recovered, obviously, to pre-pandemic levels, and they probably won't for a while, but expenses are, and in some cases those have been subsidized, and we're not sure how long those will last, but those things are just not sustainable for most people. And as we look at now, a second wave that's hitting us this fall, as well as more restrictions and more closures, it is more important than ever to think about actually innovating to a new business model, or an adaptation of your existing business model. For gyms that are closed down again, which has happened in many areas in the world, and especially here, it's a perfect time to focus on what you can control. So that is how your business is going to operate when the doors are closed, but how it also is operating moving forward, knowing that you've got these realities, and to try and make it more future-proof. So the challenge is that there's a lot of uncertainty still. We don't really know what is going to happen in the future. That stuff is out of our control. We don't know, as our case is going to continue to rise, are they going to fall? I think everyone is hoping to get to January and see some rebound of regular January revenues of the new year, but we don't know if that's going to happen, or if we're going to see a lot of people get their annual membership and not renew it. Those are really unknowns and uncertainties. So with that uncertainty, just hoping for a rebound, and hoping for members to come back, hoping for a vaccine in the future, again, another uncertainty. It's really not a sound business strategy for the future, and to be able to sustain the business and be profitable. So what we do need is some things that are going to help stabilize and help future-proof, as we said. So for that, gyms and trainers, we have to look at developing new business models beyond just the membership one-on-one PT, personal training type models, looking at new revenue streams that are those things plus things in between that, and also looking at reaching out to brand new markets outside of your current member base or your current geographic location, and what that really looks like. So that doesn't just mean taking classes and putting them online, or taking training and doing it virtually. I do believe that's part of the mix, but I don't think that that's going to really work to scale significantly, and we'll go through the challenges with that and the opportunities with that in the next video. So for now, let's explore the economic realities of what is happening currently, what's going to help frame the rest of the videos in this series. So let's take a look at the economics and the business model for gyms to start. Pre-pandemic, these numbers were somewhat predictable for gyms. In a basic business model, or basic example, you had most of your revenue coming from membership dues, some of it coming from selling PT sessions, and then the rest of it coming from other products and services that might be sold in the gym. So depending, you might have a PT studio that has a different mix, or places that have a clinic in them that might have a different form of revenue in that sense. But basically, every gym had these revenues that were coming based on the proportions of what the services that were sold in the gym here. Now, if you look at the expenses, the biggest expense was staff and payroll for the most part for most gyms. And then there's other things, operations like your rent, utilities, things like that, marketing, equipment purchases, paying for different software, all the different operating expenses that you had as part of the gym that made up the mix of the gym in the pre-pandemic. So basically, if your revenue pie that you were bringing in was larger than the expense pie that you had, that's where your profit came from. So if you had also done, and marketed well in your area, you should have saturated most of your available market, most of the locally available market, and gotten members from there. And this is the sort of membership and access-based model, coupled with, running some classes which help retain and sell those memberships, and selling PT sessions, which is the other revenue stream that most gyms have some mix of those as the main revenue source. Now, if we look in the pandemic, with closures and reopenings, these pies look very different. So if you look at the revenue pie, depending on how things have come back for people, for the most part, people are looking at 50 to 70% of the revenues maybe have been recovered from membership dues that are now still occurring, and same with PT sessions. People have reported, drop-offs that ranged, I've heard, anywhere from 10% all the way up to 50 and 60%, depending on the gym. So that revenue, there's just a big hole in that revenue pie now, a gap that's missing there. So if you look at the other side of things on expenses, in many cases, expenses have even increased. You have more staff that's needed to staff the facility now, more expenses for cleaning and PPE and those types of things to follow along with new operational guidelines as well. Rent and utilities have remained about the same for people, and in some cases they're even increased, because if they weren't paying during closures, they're paying more now to pay it back. So the expense pie has gotten a lot larger in a lot of cases, while the revenue pie is now missing a big chunk of it. So it's harder to get to break even in this circumstance. Unless the expenses are subsidized, which we've seen in many places, or that you're covering that gap with past savings or loans or something like that. But in either of those cases, that's really not something that's sustainable moving forward in the future. So how do we balance it out in this new reality? Well, the focus has been, for the most part, on recovering that lost revenue, trying to get members back, trying to get members off of freeze, trying to fill that pie back up in terms of memberships has been really where the focus has been. Now, in some cases, you've also seen people moving classes and personal training online, which as well has been there to try and keep people going. And while at the start, and for some cases, worked to sort of stem the tide of losses, haven't lost as many or had as many cancellations or as many lost PT sessions by moving things online, hasn't necessarily scaled really well for a lot of people, or shown to actually attract a bunch of new revenues in most cases. So that's been a tough thing to sort of fill that back up. So the other difficulty is attracting new members at this time, unless they're coming from a facility that's just been closed, just because the appetite for fitness and the risk of people going in has definitely changed. Consumer expectations have changed, so attracting new members hasn't necessarily been super easy, just given the circumstance everyone's facing right now. So if your market usually should be saturated with the member base around you, and if it not, it'll be quickly filled with these new members, and we're left with sort of a gap of how do we make up the rest of the revenue. So you need to fill that up, with new revenue streams, and we're looking at, again, reaching out to new markets, outside of that one that you've saturated in your existing market or geographically that you might have. Now, that also can look at things like, as much as online streaming and content and personal training sessions or virtual sessions are going to be part of the mix, it's clear that you're going to have to offer new services like programming and a new service mix, and look at how you engage people that might not come into your physical gym, as part of your market, or look at driving new people to that from other markets, like we've said, corporate wellness and healthcare. So we'll explore this sort of, in the next video, we're going to explore as well, like why the online stuff, some of that stuff is hard to scale, and who you're competing against in that sense. But that stuff is definitely good to generate leads, and as part of the mix that we need to do to look at offering that. If we look at it, only about 17.2% of people are gym members in general. That was pre-pandemic. So you've got to be looking outside of the typical, 17%. We look at that other 80% as where there's a lot of potential to attract new revenues. And those people aren't necessarily people, be walking into your gym for a membership. So there has to be this shift from a membership-based model into more of a hybrid model of service and membership, and trying to help more people just outside of your actual physical facility. Now, if we look at trainers, there's a similar shift happening just based on similar economic realities, right? So pre-pandemic, most trainers, most or if not all of their income was coming from one-on-one training sessions. So rather than expenses being the limiting factor on them and their ability to earn, really the time was the biggest thing, and how that was spent was the big limiting factor for trainers. So pre-pandemic, most trainers are spending a majority of their time in those training sessions, working with clients, and have little time realistically for documenting or prospecting for new clients, or developing the business as it is. the main factor driving income for a trainer is how many sessions you could do with clients in a given week. It's the main factor. So with the pandemic, it had an effect on most trainers, with clients pausing or stopping training, people canceling, especially for those trainers that worked in gyms. There was a significant drop off for clients. So that left a gap in both the revenue side of the pie in terms of being able to charge for sessions and charge your hourly rate, as well as just how much time was being spent on those sessions themselves. So the question is how are you going to spend the extra time that you have as a trainer to evolve and develop your business and make it more sustainable moving forward? So the solution, similar to gyms, is looking at needing to develop new services to reach a new client base and potentially new markets as well. This is especially true of trainers where, the number one objection usually to people purchasing training is cost. So if you can develop services that are at a lower cost, a lower involvement, where you'll access a much larger potential market for those services. So that includes selling things like content subscriptions, different types of programming, and an oversight where there's less involvement and less time spent directly with clients. And those things can be charged at a lower cost, and you can attract a larger audience that way, sell to more people. So this has really changed the way the trainers are spending their time, where there's still a big amount of time working directly with clients. Of the clients you've maintained in that one-on-one trainer base, which is still a big part of it. And the trainers that are succeeding are mixing that, having that one-on-one time with now having some online clients and content and other things that make up that mix. So you're still going to have that time spent with clients, but it also means spending some of that other time on creating content, doing things like having marketing activities like social media, putting content out there, maybe developing a website, and looking at just developing more potential training clients and developing more leads through the activities you're doing with the other time you've got. So it also can mean spending more time actually documenting and maintaining program. Of course, if you use a tool like Trainer Plus, then it can be done really easily, and you can engage people directly through their phone for these new types of services. So the main impact is that for in this case, time is no longer the limiting factor on income necessarily, and trainers, you can be more in control of your schedule, where you're still having that time for one-on-one, but you control when you're doing the other work or when you're maintaining those other clients that are outside of that regular realm. So the trainers we've seen make this shift to offer a wider range of services. Not only have they been able to maintain a lot and retain a lot of their client base and make a decent living in the pandemic, in a lot of cases, these trainers are actually growing their revenues and growing their business through the pandemic, and especially now as things have been somewhat reopened. So what do all these numbers mean, and all these changes in the business model really mean moving forward for the fitness industry? Well, right now there's a new paradigm. We've all heard about it. There's a huge shift that's happened in consumer behavior and expectations, and that is especially true of the fitness industry. People are working remotely. They're more used to working out at home as well, more used to doing video calls and getting content from streaming. That as well applies in fitness. People are embracing digital solutions more than they ever have before. So the old way of doing business for gyms and trainers, realistically, is just no longer sustainable and profitable, and this reality isn't changing anytime soon. So I know it's difficult, and many people in the fitness industry have a lot of anxiety on what to do next and what the future holds. But the faster that you embrace this reality and make changes on how you do business and deliver these services, the quicker you can start to begin to survive. Well, you can survive and begin to thrive in this new world and drive towards profitability. So this means looking at delivering new services that still deliver on the value of what members have, because at the end of the day, that's still what they need as much as anything, which is most people need accountability, motivation, and the knowledge of what to do, when to do it, and how to do it, and how that changes over time. And that's the type of services in between. For those that are self-efficacious, then you can look at still the streaming content, those classes, things like that. There's still people that are going to need the one-on-one sessions as well. But now you can open up this spectrum of services in between those two things that's going to open up, many new potentials for both your current member base and to go to other markets. And why that's important is because when you look at reaching to those other markets, as we'll discuss in future videos, you really have to have a different service set for them, especially given that the traditional things that we used to offer for things like corporate wellness, and it's always been difficult to reach out to healthcare. There's a totally different expectation from those markets now more than ever if we reach out to them. So in the next video, what we're going to go do is we're going to go through the different online options that we've talked about, and just look at some of the reality of supply and demand in terms of how those things work and how those things can kind of work together. And then we'll continue to go through looking at how to take that innovative mindset, so how to develop these things and take that mindset in a lean way to optimize and get these services built out, and then eventually to scale. And then we'll look at running challenges, reaching out to markets like corporate wellness and healthcare in separate videos as we go. So if you want to get more of these videos and more of our content, then make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on social media, and also tune in to our podcast, The Future of Fitness, which you can find anywhere you get your podcast. Thanks and happy training.